Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local.
Welcome, everybody, to our 20th edition of the Near Memo. And today you have just me and Mike Blumenthal. David Mem is off golfing somewhere, hopefully doing well with that. And this is our summer solstice / Juneteenth edition. So we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about different things that happened this week, but we're going to try and weave them into a kind of a larger conversation and how all the pieces fit together. And Mike, do you want to say anything before we get started?
No, just that if you're listening to our podcast and not watching this on video, you need to join us on YouTube because Greg's do this week looks very much like Medusa. Yeah. And when he pointed it out to me, he told me I would turn to stone.
Yes, it's the Medusa cut. So, that's specifically what I asked for.
That's right.
No, it's
it looks very casual.
It is very casual based on the fact that I just went into the shower and that was it. The challenge, I used to have much shorter hair. I grew it out. People seemed to like it, but then it got really heavy and bulky. And so I cut it recently. I had it cut for the first time in 16 months or something, or almost 16 months. And I said, well, don't take it all the way back. And you get this sort of awkward kind of neither fish nor fowl kind of hair. So that's where I am. But
got it. Well, at some point you become like me, where you have the same hairstyle for 50, 40 years. It doesn't change. You don't even look when they cut it.
I'm almost at that point.
Chair quickly.
All right. Well, right. So what did Google do just a couple of days? I mean, Google's always doing things, but they made a blog post that was pretty interesting.
Right. Yeah. So the blog post was one about their new merchant experience. Was the sort of lead story where a merchant can now edit their listing directly from the search interface, as opposed to having to go all the way into the Google My Business. But what was interesting to me about it was several things. One was they're giving much more granular ability to input much more granular information directly from search. So things like business services, things like products can be entered now directly from a search interface. So it's very simple. And then the other piece was that they're giving away Pointy, their point of sale sort of scanner that automatically sees what products you are selling at point of sale and then uploads them to the cloud for inclusion in the merchant center. They're giving that away for free until September.
I mean, the thing, just to digress about Pointy for a second, I mean, it was originally an Irish company. It was acquired, I think, in January of 2020, but I may be mistaken about that, by Google. And they, for years, companies had been trying to work with small businesses to get real-time inventory online. And Pointy had this kind of genius approach that required literally no investment of time from the business owners, just to plug into their point of sale, and then they capture the inventory data and they use an algorithm to make assumptions about what's in stock based on the frequency of items sold. If I'm oversimplifying, but it was just really a brilliant kind of solution to the problem of getting small business inventory online. And so,
a good bridge solution sort of for a business that's got point of sale but isn't ready for or hasn't implemented Shopify or something, right? So it works for smaller places, a little less sophisticated places, and opens up the world of product inventory to Google.
Right, and I think Google doesn't really care what the source of the product inventory data is, as long as they get the data. And the various players in the ecosystem that are providing that at different levels of sophistication.
And I would posit that the success of Shopify and all the other players getting into this, we saw Square introducing a point of sale system last week,
and Wix. It was Stripe actually, not Square.
Stripe, Stripe and Wix. But all them getting into it, I think Google will get out of the hardware at some point. I think the hardware would be a distraction.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting, just briefly about Wix and Stripe is, I mean, in the sort of I almost said pantheon. That's not exactly right. You've got me on this kind of Greek thing. In this,
the Greek god syndrome.
In this sort of range of services that these companies are offering their small business customers, point of sale. For a while, Groupon had a hardware point of sale system, and I think Yelp did as well. But it's very interesting to sort of see these e-commerce companies or these digital companies, coming into the physical world and complementing their services with this, physical point of sale system, which of course gives them access to a tremendous amount of data, which is really valuable as we're talking right now.
Right, and it gives Google access.
Absolutely.
To all
More
this
importantly,
data. I mean, one of the big trends in Google that we've been seeing is this more granularity in the knowledge graph. So if they have a business location, they want to know what services that business has or what products that business have. And this process has been going on, obviously, or at least visibly, for 10 years. In fact, what I just thought about this morning was how some ideas from Google are ahead of their time. Like Frugal was 12 years too early, almost, right? Free Product Merchant Center now makes sense because there's so much more online available data. But Google is collating all of that and trying to assess it in real time, building out an incredible knowledge graph of locations, of hours, of phone numbers, of products,
attributes,
services,
everything,
attributes, events, everything.
I mean, it's almost too much in a certain way. I mean, I think Google is insatiable when it comes to data, but typically when I use Google Maps, I'm just using it for quick local searches, or I'm using it for directions. Although increasingly I use Apple Maps for directions in my car. And when you spend any time with Google Maps, if you drill into it and you examine all the buttons and all the features, I mean, it goes down and down and down and down, and there's just an enormous amount of content there. I wonder sometimes whether it's like Excel or something. I can do 3 things on Excel, but people who really master it can do an enormous number of things, and I just wonder if all that informational depth. I mean, Google will certainly put it to use, but ordinary people can't take full advantage of that. It seems to me. Google will have to.
That's correct, and
serve it up in a really right time, right place kind of way.
That's correct. And I think Maps, you're right, is getting very complicated as an interface, but I think that they are working on multiple simpler interfaces to surfaces. One example of that is search by photos that we're seeing on the mobile desktop, where all you're seeing about a business, this shift away from a yellow page listing to just a visual image of the product you searched for locally, plus a star rating for the business. And you can compare the engagement rings from Barbara Oliver to the engagement rings from Andrew Jewelers in market. Very, very Instagrammy like display. So they are exploring interfaces that are much simpler, at least as an interface to transactions. So I was reading some 2017 research from Google that said that 1 out of 2 searchers did local searches on Google with the goal of setting up an appointment.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think people have the expectation that they will be able to. And certainly Google has been building features that allow that. Messaging is one of those. The integration with various calendaring companies is another. And as I explored the other day in the blog post, ordering food for delivery or pickup is another.
Well, Google for a few years at least has been saying that one of their sort of informal mission statements is and I can't remember it verbatim right now. Sundar Pichai said it at one of their developer conferences. Something like organize all the world's information and get things done. Right. So they've added things. So they added this sort of transactional dimension to their discussion of what their purpose was. And this is exactly what you're talking about. Bringing all these capabilities together into the search or maps interface that then allows people to go to the next step, the transactional step, and make a connection to a business or secure, make an order or secure an appointment or whatever it is, which also enormously helps them in terms of proving value, delivers a good experience to the customer, but it also enables them to prove value to the business owner. It sort of helps boost their general proposition.
And because they also have a payment system, they're able to extract at least some rent from every transaction.
Right. And so diversifying revenue there.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.